Okay, story time. What story? How I got a probably good publisher deal from my professors by leveraging them against each other, but I came in with a booty cheek strat, so thankfully that didn't go through, and yeah, they were gonna give me money for not having to do too much, in my opinion at the time, but of course, we still failed to make our promises, ha ha ha. So yeah, let me tell you about it. So context, yes. I am learning game development at a university. I am in my final year, so I am taking my capstone course. For my capstone course, I need to form a team, make a game, and publish it to the public for the world to see, e.g. by putting it on Steam. And in order to simulate how many games are actually made in the real world, my professors, there are 2 of them in my course, created an assignment where we need to pitch changes we'll make to our game and negotiate a deal out with them as for how many assignment points those changes would net us. It's meant to mirror how game developers ask game publishers for the money to make a game, and then the 2 negotiate how much of the game's revenue the publisher will receive. So, in other words, developers and publishers, look at this game I'm making. Don't you like it? Don't you think it'd make you lots of money? Wow, yes and yes. Can you give me $1 million so I can finish it? Okay, but you gotta give me 60% of the money it makes. Can you do 50%? There's another publisher that told us they do 50%, but we like you more than them. Okay, deal. Me and my professors, look at all these additions I propose for the game I'm making. Don't you like them? Don't you think it'd make my game way better? Wow, yes and yes. Can you give me a 100% on the assignment so I'm motivated to make them? Okay, but then I want you to also add controller support then. Okay, but then I won't have time to add streamer mode as I proposed. Okay, deal. So here's the table of contents for this video. There's 3 things. The first thing is a story. How I leveraged my professors against each other in order to get a better deal. Second is the problem with my initial deal to them. And third is how I got away with promising to do less than originally proposed, but still failed to make those promises. Sad face. So if you're ready, then let's do this.
Let's do this.
Alright, so starting with the first thing off of that table of contents, how I leverage my professors against each other in order to get a better deal. You remember this part from the previous slide? I didn't include it just so I could have a fancy example to give to you. No! It was foreshadowing. You see, I'm not a super pro at negotiating or anything like that. I would say I'd be like a level 2 noob in Mafia City when it comes to this stuff. Not a level 1 noob though. Because shopping around or going to multiple sellers is like one of the most fundamental things you can do when you're trying to get a good deal on just about anything. But actually, I'm gonna be real with you, I probably would not have done what I did, pitching to both professors and leveraging their offers against each other, if it hadn't been that on the day of class when my professors announced this assignment, one of them casually threw in a little line. He said something like, yeah, you can pitch to us both and go with whoever gives you the better deal. You can use us against ourselves. And that made me remember, oh yeah, you are supposed to do that when you're trying to get a good deal on just about anything. So yeah, honestly, it's not even like all me or anything like that. Honestly, if it hadn't been because I was paying attention in class and I heard that line, I probably would have just went with the first deal that the whatever professor I ended up pitching to was. I would have gotten scammed. But I didn't. No, it was I who scammed the professors. Not actually though, I just think I got a pretty good deal, but I have no way of actually confirming that, by the way. But anyways, so now actually let's get into how I did all that. I go to my professor's office hours. Let's call him Professor Cole. I go to Professor Cole's office hours and I give him my pitch via a presentation. I definitely did not have to give him a whole presentation. It's not that deep. It's just an assignment for school dog. But when it comes to the real deal, game developers always pitch to publishers with presentations. So I did it too, to kind of show like, hey, I know what I'm doing here. I'm very serious and professional. You should sign a contract with me now. And yeah, he liked my pitch. He said he'd like to make a deal with me. And then he lowballed me. He said, yeah, for all that work you said you'd do, and it was a lot of work, not gonna lie, I'll give you 30 out of 100 points on the assignment. He said, yeah, I'll give you 50 if you go above the bare minimum, and upwards of 80 if you put your entire blood, sweat, and soul into it and it's like actually peak. So I said, I like more time, but we've been talking for an hour now and your office hours are over. I'm glad you like the additions I proposed. I like them too. So on that basis that we both want this, I'd love to make a deal with you. But let's come back to this at a later time. And that was the end of day 1. I go to my other professor's office hours. Let's call him Professor Leck. I give him the same presentation pitch I gave Professor Cole, except I performed the pitch a little better because I got a little practice from last time, and the presentation is slightly modified after receiving some feedback from Professor Cole, so it's a little more improved. Anyways, at the end of the presentation, instead of letting him give the first offer like I did Professor Cole did, I decided that I was going to make him the first offer this time. I told Professor Leck that since I was going to make the first offer, I didn't want to accidentally lowball myself, so I'm going to give him an outrageously high number and he's totally free to try to negotiate it down. And so I asked for 1,000 points on the assignment, which is only worth 100 points, by the way. And so, yeah. Now, you see, Professor Leck is very kind. He wasn't like, I'm out. He actually said, go write up everything you proposed into a contract and assign each promise some points totaling up to 1,000. So you can give me your reasoning for why I should give you 1,000 points. And then I'll read all of that and then give you my offer. I said, wow, I can't believe you actually let that slide the way you did. And then I left to go make that contract. Okay, so I'm at home now writing this contract for Professor Leck. And I figured while I'm at it, I'll send Professor Cole a copy of this contract, but asking for less points. Professor Cole lowballed me, so I figured I'd highball him. And then after negotiations, we'd probably meet in the middle, which is along the lines of where I'd actually like to be. So I sent the contract to Professor Leck asking for 1,000 points, and a copy to Professor Cole asking for like 600 points, if I remember correctly. I sent those contract Google Doc links to professors for review through the class Discord server because that's how they told us they must be sent. But you see, the problem with having to share via Discord server is that the professors will be able to see that I'm also trying to make a deal with the other professor. And in the case of Professor Leck, if he opens Professor Cole's contract, he'll see I'm offering the exact same things but for less points. So here's what I did. I sent the contract Google Doc links not using the everyone with this link can view link, but rather the share directly with an email account thingy, where I shared Professor Cole's contract with just his email and sent him the link to view in the Discord server, and Professor Leck's contract with just his email and sent him the link to view in the Discord server. Yeah, there's no way to hide that I was pitching to both professors. I had to take the L there, but at least I was able to hide what I was asking for from the other professor. And yeah, honestly, it's not really that crazy what I did, but if it wasn't for my teammate who came up with the direct email account share idea, I probably would have taken 2 L's instead of 1. Because even though it's not that crazy, I mean, I wasn't able to come up with that at the moment. So credit to my teammate there. Completely their idea there, not my idea. I go back to Professor Cole's office hours. He tells me, hey, I saw you send a contract out to Professor Leck as well, but you made it so I couldn't view the document. That was really smart. Actually, he didn't say that. You know what he said? He called it a genius move. A genius move. You hear that? Not just really smart, but genius. So, teammate, if you're watching this part, this was for you. You deserve this glaze for your genius idea. Anyways, so Professor Cole asked, did Professor Leck give you an offer? Because if you didn't, then you don't have any leverage. Also, I understand because we told you to use the Discord server, there's no way of hiding that you were going to both professors, but just know that if we were actually publishers, that would make you look bad because you look less loyal. So let me explain that. Imagine you were applying to McDonald's and Burger King for a job. If McDonald's has not given you an offer yet, you wouldn't want them to know you're also applying to Burger King, or else they'll be like, okay, do you really want us then? But if McDonald's has given you an offer, say $18 an hour, and Burger King has also given you an offer, but it's for $20 an hour, then you're okay to tell McDonald's, hey, Burger King is offering me $20 an hour. You better raise your offer from 18 to more than 20, or else I'm going over there. So when you're applying for jobs or shopping for a car or pitching to publishers, don't let them know you're dealing with other parties unless they give you a deal and you also have a deal from one of the other parties that's better. So going back to Professor Cole, I hadn't received an offer back from Professor Leck yet, but I remembered this. So you can give me your reasoning for why I should give you 1,000 points, and then I'll read all of that and then give you my offer. So I tell Professor Cole, he hasn't given us an offer yet, but he said that he will after looking through our contract. And by the way, we offered the exact same thing to him, but for way more points, and he was cool with that. And that's what did it for us. So upon hearing that, Professor Cole raised his offer from 30 out of 100 points to something like 250 out of 100 points. It was celebration time. This assignment was cleared. But then Professor Cole dropped some wisdom on me that changed everything. Okay, so let's go to part 2 here. The problem with my initial deal to them. So this is how I structured my initial contract draft with both Professor Cole and Professor Leck. I promised a bunch of things that we'd add to our game, things that unless not a single challenge came up during development, we're not going to be able to do all that. So the name of the game here of my initial strategy was Buffer. I wanted my points total to be way over 100, so that way in case bad things happen, we can reduce the amount of points we're going to get and we'll still end up getting full marks on the assignment. Well, turns out things don't really work out like that. It also turns out that my strategy was actually just garbage, but hold on, I'm getting to that. So Professor Cole told me that in the couple of contracts he's already made with some of my classmates, and in the professional contracts that get made between game developers and publishers, typically you're not given points/money per item like this. Typically you'd write out what you're going to do and how much you're going to get for doing all of it. If you sign the contract and later it turns out you won't be able to deliver one or more of the promises, the whole contract must be renegotiated. He said, if I really want, I can make a contract with him where I list the exact amount of points per thing promised and write into the contract that if I fail to do that thing, I only lose the amount of points is assigned. But then he hit me with this. Imagine you're the games publisher. Why would you want to make a deal with someone who says to you, yeah, you should expect us to not deliver what we promise? That sounds like a horrible person to do business with. So that was a great example that Professor Cole gave me, and I realized immediately the error of my ways. Professor Cole then recommended I go back home and write a new contract, one where we promise a lot less and in return ask for less points, and then we just do the couple of things we say we'll do. That sounded good to me, so I left to go do that. I wrote up the new contract, sent it to Professor Cole, and he said he'd give me 135 points for it. 135 points for a 100-point assignment where I only have to do like half the things I originally was promising. What a great deal! Good job, Justin. You're amazing. Yes, indeed, it was a deal so much better than what Professor Cole had offered before, a deal I was totally down to sign with. But I couldn't sign it right there and then because there was one last thing I needed to do if I wanted to do things properly. I go to Professor Leck's office hours again, and I sit down and I tell him, alright, so here's the deal, and I'm sorry that I have to put things on you like this, but Professor Cole has offered me a really good deal and you still haven't yet. Because of him, you gotta give me a better deal right now on the spot, or else I'm gonna have to go with him. Professor Leck said, I understand, and then he scrambled around for a bit, thought to himself for a bit, and then he gave me his offer. And not gonna lie, his offer was kind of booty. He basically offered something like 10% more points, but we'd have to do 50% more work. Yeah, sorry, Professor Leck. Nice try. But ain't no way I can accept that one, bruh. So I tell him, sorry, I still like the other offer, so I'm gonna go with that one. Thanks so much for giving me your time today and in our previous meetings. Professor Leck said, yeah, no problem. I don't take any offense or anything. I'm glad you got a good deal. And yeah, I ain't being that one. And boom! Just like that, the negotiations were done. Now it's celebration time. Now the assignment was clear. Let's go! Negotiations were in fact not done. Meh, I mean, like, yeah, we got our contract. That is indeed a big achievement and it was a lot of work. But now me and my team had to actually do the things we said we'd do in the contract, and that, oh my gosh, bruh. Okay, so yeah, we didn't end up being able to do everything we said we'd do, even though it was only half of what we originally were promising. Man, make game hard, bro, you know what I mean? If you're a game dev or you know about game dev, surely there's like a 99% chance you know what I mean, right? Surely? Please! So, after a few weeks after signing the contract, but still an okay amount of time before the semester is over, I go to Professor Ko for renegotiations. I made sure to go early, not towards the end of the semester, because that helps with getting favorable renegotiations. Imagine being a publisher and being so excited that the team you're working with is 1 day away from finishing GTA 7, but then they suddenly tell you, yeah, we barely did everything we promised. Wouldn't you prefer being told that like a few months in advance so you have time to figure out what to do? So I go to Professor Cole and I tell him, yeah, we're not gonna make it. Can we get rid of like 1/4 of what we promised in the contract for 115 points? And by the way, remember the current contract was for 135 points. He said, fine, but I want you to make a video for your classmates and the future students that will be taking this class, chronicling your adventures negotiating with me and Professor Leck, so maybe they can learn from it or something. I said, cool. I like my classmates and I like making videos. I don't have much time, but I'll do it for the money. AKA points, by the way, is not actually for the money. And so that's why I'm making this video. And that's also gonna be the end of this video. So special shout out to Professors Cole and Professor Leck for this amazing class that they're teaching. Shout out to my teammate who came up with the genius Google Doc share idea. And shout out to the rest of my team for working so hard to fulfill the promises I put into our contract. And yep, that's gonna be the video. Bye bye. Hope you have a nice day.